Gamers! Hey yo, what the? Alright, so I haven't done this yet. It is finally time to do our meta tier list now that the bestials are here. The reason I didn't do it yet is because I'm not a huge fan of doing preemptive tier lists when it's a format where I'm not too sure how it's going to pan out. I wasn't sure how much things would shake up with the bestials come into the game, but I'm happy to report that actually the meta changed drastically, and I actually really like the format right now. I really enjoy it. I'm at Master 2 currently, so I have dabbled with a lot of decks. I played pretty much every deck that's like at the top end of the list and a couple of the decks that are below, and I kind of faced and experienced most of these strategies already, whether I was playing them or playing against them. So I feel like I'm in a better spot to make a tier list now than if I made it like a week before the format even started. So as per usual, I like putting the very best deck or two at the top of the list just to begin things, because every deck kind of revolves around what's the top of the format. That's how a format works, right? So right now, I mean, this didn't change. Tearlament is still the best deck. Yes, bestials are here. Bestials do hurt Tearlament a lot. And what happened is not that Tearlament is no longer the best deck. Instead, Tearlament is no longer the only best deck. So Tearlament and Sprite, I would say, are the two best decks in the game right now. We got Sprite Sprint as well as Double Cross. Now, I don't know if Double Cross really had that huge of an impact on where you would rank Sprite, but Sprint actually has a huge impact on where you rank Sprite. It gives them a lot more gas and also makes it so, like, if you stop their searcher with the Gigantic, they can still get into some more searching by sending an angler to the graveyard. Also, Sprint did help Tearlament as well, because now your Tearlament players can just, like, you know, send a Merly to the grave with the Sprint, worst case scenario, if you interrupt a lot of their plays. Now, with that being said, even though Tearlament technically got buffed, I wouldn't say it's enough buffs to make up for the fact that bestials are around and make it a lot harder for Tearlament to do their thing. In fact, I don't think these are the only tier 1 decks. I think we have a couple of tier 1 decks in the game right now. Another one would be Branded Despia. I think Branded Despia with the bestial cards is absolutely incredible. The bestial cards obviously really help you go into that matchup against Tearlament, but it's also like the cards are just good in the deck in general. Serenir adds some extra consistency to the deck. We also have Cartesia now, and Cartesia is also an amazing tool for the deck. Cartesia have given you access to that Grand Guignol, which also adds some extra consistency, as you can pair that with the Serenir in order to search Branded Fusion in a different way if you don't have access to your Aliber. So now you have a lot more ways of getting to your Branded Fusion, and you also have a lot more plays if your Branded Fusion gets ashed. So I think this deck is in a really good spot right now. Very hard to interrupt, very, very strong strategy, and you'll notice Tearlament gets mixed around with both of these decks a lot. So I guess that's also, you can include those lists in here too, you know, like Tier Sprite and Tier Branded Bestial Pile, whatever. But yeah, I would say these three decks are the best decks in the game, and from there I think we can start talking about other strategies and just kind of make our way through the tier list. So first off, let's talk about a deck that's kind of new to Master. Well, it's not new, but they got some new support which makes them a bit more playable in Master Duel right now, and what we're talking about is Dogmatika. Dogmatika is cool going first. It's really, really scary, and what it can set up going first, it can kind of make you not be able to play. However, I think a deck that kind of focuses on sending your opponent's cards from the extra deck to the grave in a format with tier going around is just bound to not be very good. So at best, I'm probably going to end up putting this like at the bottom of Rogue. I just don't think it's a really good strategy for the current format. I do think as you see tier kind of losing some space in the metagame, we might actually see Dogmatika be a little bit better. Probably not tier 1, but probably like, you know, tier 3, tier 2. So, you know, Dogmatika is still solid. I just don't think it's quite up here. I think it's still just the fact that tiers around makes it kind of rough to play. Next up here, another deck that's just a victim of the format. We have Mathmech. I think Mathmech are a bit better than Dogmatika, because at least they don't straight up just send your opponent's kit to the grave, but they still get hurt tremendously by bestials. They get hurt tremendously by just in graveyard hate in general, which a lot of people are running because of tier. So it's kind of tough to be a Mathmech player right now. Not to say you can't get to master rank. I think any deck on this list can realistically get to master rank, honestly. It's just that it's going to be a little bit tougher if you're playing this deck. You're going to need to be a really good pilot, and you're also going to need a little bit of luck. So I would say Mathmech not in the best of places right now. It's still really cool, but probably also going to be pretty low Rogue for me. Next up, let's talk about a good deck. So for higher Runick, I was kind of sleeping on this deck, and I mean, I still didn't really play it. It's not for me. I have a favorite version of Runick, which you guys probably know what it is, and we'll talk about that soon. Really solid deck all around, good consistency, strong engine, good at doing removal, draws a bunch of cards, helps you set up all your spells and stuff. You just keep drawing into your deck more and more, getting more of those Runick spells. It's really just an amazing advantage generating engine in a deck that already generates so much advantage. If you were to ask me my preferred way of playing Runick, it would have to be Naturia Runick. Now, am I putting Naturia Runick above for higher Runick? Not really. I would say these are basically in the same tier. I just like Naturia Runick more. That's the one I've been playing. I've been enjoying it a lot. This is actually the deck that got me to Master Rank 2, and I think I'm going to be doing my climb to Master Rank 1 using Naturia Runick because it's just such a solid strategy. But yeah, you really can't sleep on this deck. It's just amazing. Now with the Bestials, it's even better, and I will be dropping a deck profile about this deck now that we have the Bestials, because the Bestials are so good in this format, and they're amazing extenders for this deck as well. This deck loves to summon level 6 synchros, so with a level 6 synchro and a bestial, you can go into some really good XCs such as Beatrice and Wallow. So you know, with a Beatrice you can send a shuffler to the grave to destroy tier. With a Wallow you can grab stuff from your opponent's graveyard to interrupt tier. So it's just so good at setting up tier hate, but not just tier hate. It's really solid against pretty much every deck, and you get to banish your opponent's deck while also setting up a bunch of interruptions, which make it really hard for your opponent to play. It's just a really interesting strategy with a lot of back and forth. So obviously I'm a bit biased here. I love this deck, so I'm going to put it at the top of tier 2, but like arguably you could put this at top of tier 2 as well. It's just this is my baby, you know what I mean? I can't wait to show you a video with the Bestials. This deck is even better. Next up, let's talk about the anti-meta decks. So we'll start with Exo Sisters here. I think Exo Sister is tier 3. And I think it's tier 3 because it's an anti-meta deck. And right now, anti-meta is still really strong. It's definitely really strong. But I don't think it's quite as good anymore, just because the best decks kind of got a lot of extra gas. Like Sprint gives tier and Sprite so much extra gas. And I think that just the fact that we can play through more interruption makes a couple of banishes that they set up going first not as good. Also, because Exterio is gone since Cyberstein was banned, even more people are running evenly matched now. And Exo Sister really struggles against evenly matched, generally speaking. Of course, they can set up that big XCs. I forget what it's called, Magnifica, I think. I just don't think Exo Sister is quite as good as it was last format. Not to say it's bad. It's definitely better than Rogue. That's why I'm kind of reserving this tier 3 for those anti-meta decks, which I feel now are not quite as good, just because the meta decks actually got a lot better this format. Not to mention the fact that the format got a lot more varied, a lot more diversified. For instance, Branded Bestial is pretty much everywhere right now. And these decks that want to go like Dimensional Shifter don't do much to stop decks like Branded Bestial. I feel like anti-meta is just not quite as good when the format is more diversified, which right now it definitely is. So that's why I feel like Exo Sister, tier 3. We're going to do the same for Floowandereeze because I don't have many different things to say about either of these. Floowandereeze can set up a good interruption against evenly matched, but it still struggles against it, especially against decks like that can do a negate in the battle phase or something like that. Like if you're playing a deck with Runick cards, you could always go in the battle phase, and then if they did set up their Apex Avian, well, you can force out the Apex Avian with your freezing curses, and then you can just go ahead, activate your evenly matched, gain a bunch of advantage, and just start playing the grind game from there. And it's really hard for Floowandereeze to recover. Also, I feel like Exo Sister is just a better deck than Floowandereeze. Floowandereeze has less consistency and also just less staying power. It's a bit less scary, I would say. If everyone was playing Link monsters, like M-Pen would be a lot more scary, but right now a lot of people are playing Fusion monsters, Xyz monsters, stuff like that. You know, like Sprite mostly can get around with just playing its Xyz monsters if they're dealing with Floowandereeze. So the M-Pen Floodgate effect isn't that important, and against tier it really doesn't do much of anything. So then it's more so relying on the other stuff. Also, they don't have their win barrier statue to just win games for free. Of course, they can still win games for free with that stupid trap that they have, the Harpies Featherstorm or something like that. Either way, I'm not saying the deck is bad or anything. I just think these anti-meta strategies kind of are in the tier of their own, right below tier 2. Next up, I mean, there's no point beating around the bush. I'll just put this guy right in here right now. Dark Magician, I would say, is the best of the like DM era anime decks, and I always say this every tier list, and it hasn't really changed. YouTube Ray always carries this deck, and there's ways to play it. Now it's even better technically because you can play it with the new Bestial stuff, and it's barely a Dark Magician deck anymore if you want to go that route, but you can make it like a pseudo Dark Magician branded Bestial deck, and you know, you can kind of have some fun with that. So I mean, it's playable. It's definitely not bad, and you can get to Master Rank with it. It's just not as good as obviously the rest of the stuff on this list. You're kind of playing a gimped version of Despia for no reason. Next up here, let's do Adamantipator's. I think Adamanticators are really solid because a lot of people are playing Bestials. Bestials don't really affect decks like Adamanticators, so I think we can safely put Adamanticators as a really solid combo deck, but I would only put it in tier 2 just because going second, they might struggle a bit more. Also, if you get rid of a monster on their field early and they can't, like, they don't have a special summon or anything like that, they kind of struggle there. Of course, Vernu can help with that, so it really depends on their hand, but still, I feel like it's not in the best of places. It's still super solid, just not quite top of tier 2 like it used to be. In the current format, it still has some advantages, like I said, just because Bestials don't really affect it. We could pretty much say the same thing for Sun Avalon. I would actually say Sun Avalon is a little bit better just because it has extra consistency, and I mean Rika Sun Avalon, of course. But both of these decks are just really solid combo decks, set up really tough to crack boards, as always, but, you know, they also both have the issue of going second and just having to play through interruption. It's not always easy with these decks. It's very hand dependent, and yeah, I think they're in a pretty good spot. I mean, they're not like crazy or anything, but when they get going, you know what it is, you know how it goes, and usually you'll scoop it up before you even see the end of their combo, right? So moving on to the next deck here, let's talk about a deck that got significantly better in this format, and that would be Tri-Brigades, because Tri-Brigade Sprite, thanks to Sprint, is now a very legitimate strategy and a very strong strategy. It was not as good before because it was kind of hard to bridge the two between. You could play Tri-Brigade Sprite, but without the Sprint, it was really tough. Now with the Sprint, it kind of glues everything together, and the deck just runs a lot more smoothly, and the boards are just like really impressive. They're really scary. You can set up very reliably your Revolt with some extra interruptions from the Sprite stuff. It's just a really strong deck in general. I'm honestly feeling tier 2 for this one, and I think it's better than these two around here, so we're gonna put it up here. Sprint is a hell of a card. Sprint is absolutely insane. There's nothing else to say, really. Next up, let's do Blackwings. Now, I think Blackwings, now that Bestials around, are kind of like hurt tremendously. Obviously not as bad as these two, but I don't even think they're quite tier 3. I think I would put Blackwings like pretty high rogue or like mid rogue. They're definitely just a rogue deck in my opinion right now. Again, not to say you can't get to master rank with it. You can get to master rank with every single deck on this list, but yeah, Blackwings is just not as good when you have the Bestials going around because they just completely body Blackwings. It gets really tough for them to play, and also like Blackwings don't have the best matchup against anti-meta either. Anti-meta affects Blackwings a little bit, not as much as most decks, but just enough to like make it kind of hard to play. Like if you're playing with Blackwings against like a fully set up Exo Sister board, you're gonna have a pretty bad time, honestly. And most of these decks just like are way better in general at doing most things that Blackwings can do. Of course, Blackwings can do those crazy FTK boards, and they can do like the triple burn effect, like the triple Masquerade, but it's better than Masquerade. So, you know, you can't sleep on the Blackwings necessarily. I just don't think they're in the best spot right now. All right, next up, let's talk about Dragon Link. And Dragon Link, I'm happy to report, I think is actually a tier 1 deck. I think Dragon Link is at the very bottom of tier 1. The Bestials card are so good at helping Dragon Link. The thing about Dragon Link is with the Bestials, they have a way to play into the meta really well and just completely counter the meta. On top of just getting free extenders from it, all the Bestials are dark dragons, which is absolutely insane. Lubellion is really good in this deck too because you can just set it up and then get yourself a Branded Beast. Branded Beast is a good interruption that you can use pretty much any time since all your monsters are dragons. It's just a really solid strategy, and that little bit of extra consistency boost with the Bestials is really good. Just the fact that you get some extra extenders on top of having extra interruption against the meta decks is really solid. So just the fact that this deck plays so well into the meta right now, I don't think you can really say it's not tier 1. I think it's by far the best like build a board type combo deck. And what I really like about it right now is that it's not only a build a board type combo deck, but like if you get interrupted and stuff, thanks to the Bestial cards, you can kind of play a more reserved like control strategy with the deck and still be very successful with that. So I absolutely love this deck. I think this deck is awesome, and I'm happy to say that I think Dragon Link right now is at the bottom of tier 1. If you're not a great pilot, because this deck is kind of difficult to pilot, it's probably top of tier 2, but in my opinion, like we're gonna rank it on based on if you're playing it optimally, and yeah, optimally I would say Dragon Link is tier 1 right now. Next up, let's do Dinos, and I was gonna put Dinos at the bottom of Rogue, but the more I think about it, man, they're not even rogue, dude. Right now, Dinos just kind of struggle. The thing is, one thing I like is DD Crow is better against Dinos than the Bestials because Misk is not a light or dark. So at least they can't Bestial your Misk, but everyone's running Ash, everyone's running Maxi, so that doesn't really matter. And then like playing through a couple of interruptions is really tough in this format in particular. Playing through Havness when you're playing Dinos can be a struggle if you didn't have the Misk. It's still a strong deck, and I'm putting it in playable. The reason I'm putting it in playable is because I think you could debatably say that like branded Dark Magician is actually better than Dinos right now. Going first, Dinos are not very consistent. Low-key, this deck is more consistent than Dinos right now. And also, like, going second, sure, this deck is better. But going second is just not a great idea right now because the boards are so tough to crack. I mean, all of these decks are hard to crack going second. Tier's probably the least difficult deck to crack going second, I would say, out of this list. But the thing about Tier is they can also just set up a crime. And then if you're like trying to go evenly and they have a crime, you're going to need a second evenly or you're kind of donezo. So yeah, I don't know. Dinos are still solid. I don't think they're unplayable. And I think it's absolutely possible to get to master rank with them. It's going to be just a lot more effort than most decks on this list. And I think debatably could be harder than Dark Magician. I'm still going to put it above Dark Magician because my heart will never allow me to put Dinos under Dark Magician. But man, honestly, bro, I don't know. So yeah, Dinos, sorry, not even Rogue right now. We'll see for next format. I was testing it out with the For Hire engine, and it was decent. I got a 5-game win streak in Master Rank 5, but from there it was pretty much impossible, and I got really lucky on those 5 games where I went on a win streak. So yeah, I got a 5-game win streak in Master Rank, so that just goes to show even the worst decks on this list can absolutely make it in Master Rank. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying, like, you need to be a really good pilot, and you know, it's going to be a bit more challenging than the top decks over here. All right, next up, let's do Labyrinth. I think Labyrinth right now, not in the best of spots. I think it's probably just a rogue deck. Since it doesn't have Lady of the Silver Castle, it's kind of tough to really get your plays going. It's not nearly as good. Once we get those cards, which are supposed to come out in the next set, this deck is absolutely going to move up. I could see this deck going up to tier 3, tier 2 even. But for now, I don't, and eventually maybe even tier 1 if we see tiers get hit a bit more. But for now, I think Rogue is really the fair spot for it. Obviously, going first, it's insane. It can play a bunch of floodgates. It can play also without the floodgates and just rely on the advantage generating engine that it has. I just think right now, if you want to play like an advantage generating engine, you're kind of better off playing the Runick stuff because Runick is so good at getting rid of tier limits. Tier limits getting banished is really tough for them. They only have really one card that gets back a banished tier limit, which is the crime when it's sent to the grave for a card effect. So it's really tough for tier limit players to keep playing when you banish their stuff. So I definitely think the For Hire Runick or like Naturia Runick strategy is a lot better than Labyrinth right now for like a crazy kind of control oriented advantage generating type of strategy. But yeah, you know, that's just for now. Later we know that Labyrinth is going to get a lot better. We just need to get that support. So that's just for now, okay? Shout out Labyrinth mommy. You know, I'm not forgetting about you. I'm just waiting for that support, and you know, we'll be back together in no time. All right, and let's just do this right now. Let's put Blue Eyes at the bottom of playable. This is just a tradition at this point on tier list videos. I don't think I need to say anything about it. You can OTK with this deck. That's about it. Next, let's do, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Okay, Stun. Stun is low-key kind of better than Labyrinth or Blackwing right now, I think. Stun is just a good rogue deck right now. Like, I literally see Stun in Master Rank. I saw Stun today in Master 3. So it can't be that bad, right? It looks so ass. People are literally activating Moon Mirror Shield, setting like Solemn Judgment, 2 Floodgates, and summoning like Fossil Dyna. And for some reason, they're winning and they're getting to master rank. So look, man, I guess I can't sleep on the deck. I guess Stun is just a real strategy right now. So we'll give it that credit. It's you know, I hate the deck. I think it's brainless stuff. I think it's super cringe that anyone will play this. But, you know, shout out to you. If you like your Stun, if you enjoy this stuff, it's there. It's playable, okay? Next up, let's do P.U.N.K. I think P.U.N.K is pretty good, actually. Probably gonna... I was thinking, like, tier 3, but the more I think about it, like, we have Chaos Ruler in this game. You can play P.U.N.K with the tier limits, and P.U.N.K tier limit is really crazy. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna put it at the bottom of tier 2. P.U.N.K is just a really good strategy. It's kind of hard to rate it because there's so many different builds of P.U.N.K. It's more so used as an engine. So I guess we'll just say, like, Chaos Ruler is a good card, so we'll put it in tier 2. I don't really know what else to say about this. Like, P.U.N.K is crazy. Obviously, the bounces are cool and all, but like every build is different. I don't know what to say. Anyway, next up, let's do Heroes. I think Heroes probably top of Rogue. I could even argue like bottom of tier 3, but I think that's copium a little bit. I'm gonna put them top of Rogue. Heroes are a very real deck right now. Dark Law is a hell of a card. Dark Law is good against pretty much every single deck in the game, in the top tiers at least right now. So, you know, Dark Law is a hell of a card. Plasma is a hell of a card. You see Heroes do all these fucking amazing combos, just set up floodgates. Might as well be Stun, honestly. Heroes basically Stun, but with extra steps, except they can also OTK really quickly going second. So that's kind of the best thing going for them, I would say, is that a lot of boards are kind of easy to OTK through in the current format. So yeah, I mean, can't sleep on the Heroes. They're solid. Next up, let's do Sword Soul. I think Sword Soul is not like great right now. I was gonna put it like top of Rogue. I think it might be a bit better than top of Rogue, but it's kind of iffy, you know. It's kind of iffy. Maybe, you know, it's just like you just kind of run a bunch of hand traps. One thing is the bestials don't hurt it that much. The main thing you can really do with bestials is get rid of the Ashna Engrave, which obviously is good, but it's not like the end of the world. And Protoss, I mean, it's a good card right now for sure. Pretty much Protoss beats every best deck in the game right now. That's the main reason that I don't really want to put it this low. And supposedly P.U.N.K is playing like a pile now, like he's playing a 60 card pile Sword Soul deck. So look, I'm just gonna put it in tier 3 just so P.U.N.K doesn't like attack me or nothing. Like we'll just put it tier 3. We'll just leave it at that. And finally, for the last deck of the list, let's talk about Goaty. Goaty's good. It's still good. It's solid. Genuinely. I think it's really good. Do I want to put it tier 3? Probably not. I think the fair thing for Goaty is to put it at the absolute top of Rogue, the best Rogue deck in the game. I think that's a good spot for Goaty. I mean, Goaty is just a good deck. It's a good deck. It plays well into tier. It plays well into tier hate. It can run tier hate. It can run D-Shifter. D-Shifter wins against most decks up like up here. So, you know, it kind of has a lot of like pretty good matchups. It covers a lot of ground. The Goaty of the Deep Beyond is pretty insane. It's just a really, really solid card against most decks in the format. The one thing about Goaty, it doesn't have a great matchup against Despia, generally speaking. And, you know, it's like the banish effects are cool, but the grind game is actually not as good as you'd think. Even though they can keep banishing their stuff and just bringing it back, the grind games are actually kind of tough for this deck. So if their explosive plays in turn 2 or 3 don't pan out, it can be kind of tough for them to actually like wrap it up. You know what I mean? So I would say Goaty, top of Rogue, really solid strategy, really lovely strategy, and we're going to be seeing this a lot in the Synchro event, which I'm looking forward to because I think this deck is awesome. Don't get me wrong. This is probably my favorite artwork on like a Yu-Gi-Oh archetype in a long time. Love the artwork on these cards. They're really solid. Shout out to Goaty players. You guys are goated, but that's going to be my tier list for today, guys. Let me know what you think. I think it's a pretty solid list, honestly. I don't know if there's anything really too like crazy on here. Maybe people will be like, I don't know about Naturia Runick up here. But like, I just got Master 2 with Naturia Runick pretty easily. You just got to play the deck optimally. It's a pretty complex strategy in the sense that you have so many branching plays that you can do. And it kind of depends on like, you kind of have to learn to play into what your opponent is doing. So I think this deck is really solid, honestly. I think people are sleeping on it. I think it's totally fair to put it at top of tier 2. And maybe people will say that these are better than I'm giving them credit for, or even this. You know, it is what it is. I want to know what you guys think, though. Let me know in the comments. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Surely you don't disagree that Dragon Link is tier 1 right now. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. But anyway, make sure to like the video. Make sure to like it. I mean, it helps me tremendously. It takes like a second. Like, come on, dude. Don't be an NPC. Don't be a bot. Just hit the like button. Also, shout out to the people supporting in the UCT tier membership. That would be Raptor Ratchet, Bogman for 20, Dad, Dude, Joey, B-Dubs, Hitter Miss JT, JQ the King. You guys are awesome. Also, thank you to Coots McG. That guy's just a G. And you, who's liking, commenting, subscribing, doing all that good stuff. Really appreciate it. Make sure to follow the Kick. Kick is in the description. I really need you to follow the Kick because we might be moving off of Twitch because they might ban me because they're banning multi-streaming. I don't like it. Okay, peace.